Hello, folks, and welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I'm Charlie Burris, here as always with my co-host and A to Z Sports Tennessee writer, Zach Ragan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. And if you want to listen to it regularly, make sure you go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple, Spotify, and subscribe, because you won't miss an episode if you do when we drop them on Mondays. And I got to start saying this. YouTube. Go to the YouTube if you are a YouTube consumer. A to Z Sports channel. That's just what it is, just A to Z Sports on YouTube. We post a video version of the podcast over there, and you can see Zach and I's ugly mugs again every Monday when we post them up. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, and at A to Z Sports on Twitter, then at A to Z Sports on Instagram, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff that Zach and I write. Let's get into it. Zach, exciting news over the weekend that we found out. We have a famous listener in our midst. We discovered over the weekend, it at least appears, it might be circumstantial evidence, but Michigan basketball coach Juwan Howard, I think he listens to the show, Zach, because last week on the show, I gave what is one of my more controversial sports takes. I would like to see fighting allowed in sports, specifically football. And you and I actually said we don't think it would be a good idea in basketball. And maybe Juwan heard that. You know, he's listening. And hey, if you're out there listening this week, thanks, Coach. We appreciate the download. He heard that and he said, and I took that personally. And he went and he brought fighting into basketball because he punched another coach in the face. Did you see that, Zach? Did you see the infamous moment over the weekend?
Yeah, I don't know if we can call it a punch, kind of like an open
like
hand,
a
slap, which it might save him from being fired, because I think if it's a close fist, I think he's gone, but probably going to get suspended. I don't know. When I saw it, I was like, oh, wow, that's crazy. You know, they're getting after it. They're pretty intense, passionate. And then I didn't really think much else about it. And I got back on Twitter later and saw a lot of hot takes on the whole situation. Everybody, of course, had a strong opinion on it. I just thought it was a couple of coaches, intense moment, intense game, conference game. I think stuff like that happens. It shouldn't happen. You know, you got to suspend Juwan Howard, I'm sure, for that. At the same time, the other coach kind of didn't let him walk by, put his hand on his arm or shoulder there and kind of made it worse. But I don't know. I mean, I'm used to. I tweeted the clip out of Chaney and Calipari going at it decades ago, where he said he was going to kill Calipari, and I just kind of used to that intensity. I kind of liked it. I mean, I didn't think it was a huge deal. I don't think Juwan Howard should be fired over that. Like, if you're going to fire him, do it because the results, you know, don't fire him because of that.
I love fire from a coach. And Michigan, yeah. I don't know how they feel about Juwan Howard. He had an awesome season last year, made the Elite Eight, but then the season before was pretty meh, and this season is pretty bad. So I don't know how they feel about him, if they might be like, well, here's our cause. We'll just get rid of this guy. I genuinely have no idea. I wouldn't fire the guy for that. Although also I watched some analysis, and apparently with Mark Turgeon from Maryland, he at one point they got in like a verbal thing, and he said that he would kill Mark Turgeon or something. So it's kind of like Calipari and Chaney. I don't know. That's for someone else to litigate. But yeah, Greg Gard sort of initiated the whole thing, but you can't. It doesn't matter if Greg Gard initiated the whole thing. You can't punch a guy or slap him or whatever you want to consider it. You just can't. But
I mean, we gave Jeremy Pruitt a lot of crap for not controlling his emotions on the sideline. So I get it. It's probably not a good sign that your basketball coach is losing it that easy. but at the same time, yeah, I mean, that's probably what he would have done when he was on the court at Michigan, 20 years ago, and he's probably had a flashback to those times. The best thing I saw was that because it was the whole altercation was because Wisconsin called a timeout when Michigan was pressing. I think Wisconsin was up a decent amount. Like the game was pretty much over, 15 seconds ago or whatever it was. Calls a timeout. So that's what the whole ordeal was over. And I saw somebody tweet that if Juwan Howard was going to punch anyone over a timeout, it should have been Chris Webber.
That's a great tweet.
Whoever tweeted that, credit to you for
I would say so. Basically, the reason that the Fab Five never won anything really.
Yeah.
Well, funny situation. Probably not funny if you're a Michigan fan, but funny for everybody else that just is weighing in. I just thought that I would throw a little jab in there. But per se, he does actually listen. I do appreciate
the words there. A little jab in there.
Yeah. I got to throw one of my own.
Yeah.
Also, over the weekend, just another quick note before we get into sort of the meat and potatoes of the episode, Tennessee baseball started out their season with a sweep of Georgia Southern. 33 runs scored over the course of 3 games. It also appears that the pitching situation at Tennessee, without essentially its best pitcher in Blade Tidwell, out with injury, shoulder soreness, which can be pretty ominous in baseball. Without him, the pitching staff looked pretty dang good and potentially better than last year. Obviously, 3 games. It's 3 games, but potentially deeper, I guess you could say. And then, of course, 33 runs. So the hot offense continues for Tennessee, which was sort of their signature last year. Exciting times for the old baseballs.
Yeah. Did you make it out to any of the games this
I did not. I was in the I was going to say the beautiful state of Kentucky. I was in the state of Kentucky. I was visiting family over the weekend, so I was not able to make it, but I certainly have it on the schedule to go to some games very soon.
It's pretty impressive. 13,566 fans attended the 3-game series this weekend, which was the most in program history.
Wow.
Beat the previous record by 2,300 fans. That's an insane turnout for February baseball. Cold. It's Georgia Southern. It's not like it's another SEC program. That just shows you that Tennessee fans, if they win, fans are going to show up and support. Just put a good product out there. And this Tennessee team's fun. I mean, I'm sure you saw the home run celebration, the Joe Namath style fur jacket, whatever print it was that was put on the players after a home run. I mean, I love it. I love it because I like a baseball team showing their personality. I think it just leads to good things. Half of having a good baseball team is just the right culture. And it also pisses off Arkansas coach Dave Van Horn, who hates anything related to fun, apparently, as he not so subtly told us this past week.
Yeah, he said he did not name Tennessee specifically, but he called out programs that participate in shenanigans. Get those shenanigans out of my program. He's a curmudgeon, and I hope that Tennessee can lay the wood to Arkansas this season because he's annoying. And he is sadly a mentor to Tennessee's head coach. Came from Arkansas. Well, do you say mentor? They got into it last season. It was pretty heated. Yeah, but I think I would at least hope to some extent Vitello probably sees Van Horn as like a guy who helped him in his career, if not like a mentor type. I don't know that Vitello has ever said that, but just someone who, hey, I used to be on your staff, and because I was on your staff, I was able to get the job I have now, and I've been able to be successful. So, but they do not like each other, and I am a fan. Clearly, we're not. I know there are fans that really they like the sportsmanship. I saw posted over last week when Tennessee beat Kentucky, we posted some stuff at A to Z Sports that was like, look at Tennessee's fun post-game celebrations where they went into the crowd. And I saw a couple of people on Facebook. If you know Facebook, that's unsurprising. Saw a couple of people on Facebook that were like, I don't like that we didn't shake their hand after the win. Is this really what we're squabbling with? We didn't shake their hand. So you're not going to get any of that, like, where's the sportsmanship out of me and Zach? I don't think that's not really our MO. Have some fun. It's sports. It's sports.
And
don't take it too seriously.
I mean, who would have thought that Tennessee baseball would be really moving the needle like it does right now? I mean, that just shows what, like I said, shows what this fan base is capable of doing.
Build it and they will come.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. Tennessee
literally keep building it, the baseball stadium, because there's a lot of potential there. And Vitello, he kind of went on a little media tour before the opening weekend, talked with several different media outlets, kind of like one-on-one. And that was the main thing that he really hit on, was the improvements to the stadium. So definitely something he's not letting them forget. He signed that extension. He wants what he was promised.
Well, it's just so obvious that if they put that investment into the program, it's going to come back. It's going to come back to them, and he's doing such a good job. And man, I hope that the excitement continues. Obviously, Georgia Southern, not too great of a team that they played, but they completely dominated them from front to back. I mean, the only innings that they struggled in were the first few of game 2, and then they came back and ended up just smashing them even in that game. So that's that. A little note about baseball that we just wanted to throw in, and then let's. I'll say we're going to talk about basketball now, but we are going to cover in the latter half of the show, Kodi Burns, Tennessee wide receivers coach, is hopping to the NFL. Good for him. Make your money and get your name out there. And we're going to talk about the implications of that, the potential hires and things. There's kind of some. There's not a fan consensus that I've seen in terms of who people want to see hired, but we'll talk about some of the names that are out there. That'll be in the latter half of the show. But let's just talk briefly about Vol basketball. An up and down week. A very fun, very exciting win over Kentucky, where they just I feel vindicated. I don't know that my prediction came exactly true. They actually were even better than my prediction. Mm-hmm. But I predicted that Tennessee, I think I said they would win by like 9. I said they would kind of stick it to Kentucky some, and they did. It was so fun. Had Kentucky flailing. Worst I've seen Oscar Tshiebwe look. Ty Washington goes out with injury. Of course, that helps, but he did play for some amount in that game, and even when he was playing, they were playing terribly. And that's the height of this Tennessee program this season. Not to say that that's I said that wrong. That's the best version of this team, and that's how good they can be. They can just stick it to Kentucky, and it's a great Kentucky team. It's a Kentucky team that I think is one of the better ones that Calipari's ever had, and they steamrolled them, and then they go to Arkansas. Bud Walton Arena, one of the hardest places in America to win, frankly. It's so tough. Tennessee hasn't won there still since 2009, and they didn't on Saturday either. Just there was a lid on the basket. Nothing went right, and the refs were horrific. But on the whole, you kind of come out even either way. I know some people were pretty annoyed by that loss at Arkansas, but I mean, it's at Arkansas. Who wins at Arkansas? Auburn lost there. What were we expecting? I guess like a blowout win at Arkansas. That was never going to happen. And you didn't get blown out of the building. But, that's what were your thoughts on the week in basketball?
I think it just brings up even more just what type of tournament team we're looking at. Somebody that could easily go to the Final Four, or they could bow out in the second round. And I asked that question on Twitter after the game. I was like, how do you view Tennessee after this loss to Arkansas? And most people said like round second round, because they just can't stay hot. And a lot of people weren't really bothered by the loss to Arkansas. I feel the same way as you. I mean, I don't think it's a huge deal because it's at Arkansas, tough place to play. I don't think it really says anything about. You're not going to shoot that bad that often. I know Tennessee's had a couple of those games this year, but that was pretty horrendous. Like 27% from the field or something so absurd. Bad. I mean, that's not going to happen very often. we've seen with the wins against Kentucky recently, they won 7, 8 SEC games in a row. They can get hot and possibly make a Final Four, Elite Eight run, but they could come out and play like that in the first, second round and go home. It really makes this tournament coming up even more intriguing to me, just to see what we get. Like, I have no idea what to expect. None. Like, I feel like I kind of know what to expect, but not at all with this team.
Barnes is at a point with me. It's kind of interesting, the reaction that I get with my takes on Barnes, because there's some people that think that I'm extremely dark and I just want him fired. I don't. And then there are other people that are like, why do you go so easy on Rick Barnes? Like, I think I just take it for what it is. With Barnes at this point, it's all about the postseason. That's how I feel like about Mike Vrabel with the Titans. Okay, we know you can win in the regular season. We know you can. You've done it over the course of multiple years at this point, and you've put together good squads. What are you gonna do when it matters? That's the whole thing with Rick at this point in his time at Tennessee. And this season, we were talking earlier in the year when it looked like things might take a turn south. That if that ended up happening, there might be a tough conversation to be had after this season of just like, hey, Rick, what's your future here? I think he's kind of he's shoot off that talk. You go on an 8-win an 8-win streak within the SEC. That's pretty dang good, and in that streak, you beat some really good teams. That helps a lot. I think he staved off that sort of talk that we had earlier in the season, but he will not be able to escape it if things crumble in the postseason. You can't. That's the point where he is at in his career at Tennessee, where okay, it was a fun week in the regular season. This regular season in general, you have a good basketball team. It's probably going to be fun. You're going to win way more than you're going to lose, and that's awesome. And Tennessee's probably going to finish with, I don't know, eight losses, and that's a really good regular season in a general sense. But what are you going to do after that? Can you win an SEC tournament? Can you make it further than the Sweet 16? Can you make it to the Sweet 16? I think if he doesn't make it to the Sweet 16, there's going to be a lot of unhappy people, no matter what happens. That's where he's at. That's where he is at this time with this team. And we've said it before, he's kind of done it to himself. These are the expectations that he's created with the amount that he's paid and with what's happened in previous seasons. It is what it is.
Yeah, it's definitely going to be a very telling NCAA tournament for Rick Barnes. But even if he loses in the second round, he's not going anywhere until he decides that he's going somewhere, and unless this whole thing completely implodes. I mean, you beat Kentucky, you win 8 in a row conference games, like you said. You've pretty much secured yourself from too much criticism in the offseason. I don't know. It's tough to see. This is a big opportunity for the program. I mean, this is such a good team, such a talented team that should be able to go deep into the NCAA tournament. There's really no reason that they shouldn't, especially with Zakai Ziegler playing the way he is and kind of out of nowhere. I mean, that just really, to me, should put even more pressure on Barnes and his, needing to win this season.
Absolutely. The team arguably is better than it, quote unquote, should have been, probably.
Yeah.
And I say that within the frame of Fulke's had a terrible season, and some things like that where you thought maybe he would have a better year, and that hasn't unfolded. And you look at that and you go if he's not having a good year, Tennessee probably in general is not having a great season. But because of a guy like Ziegler, because of some of the Vescovi stepping up and really being the guy you need him to be, which he certainly has been this season. He's your leading scorer. That's huge, and they're carrying this team right now. Ziegler really struggled with the length of Arkansas in that game. That was really his first genuinely bad game that I remember him having. But I think it's a good time for him to have that adversity.
He still led the team in scoring.
Yeah, he did. And it's pretty clear Rick is leaning on Ziegler. I think taking the pressure of running point off of Kennedy Chandler has helped him a lot. Helped Kennedy Chandler a lot. Where Vescovi and Ziegler are doing it more often than anybody else. And so I like where the team is at. You can squabble over that loss to Arkansas. Yeah, it was ugly. It was horrendous. And you cannot have that type of game in the tournament. But we all know that. it just kind of goes without saying. And am I surprised that Tennessee had another game like that before the end of the season? Absolutely not. We all knew that they're capable of having a crap performance like that. They still didn't lose by that much. They were still competitive in that game. Their defense is so good.
Yeah, they were good defensively. They have been most of the year.
They gave absolute fits. They essentially, they didn't eliminate, but they really were hard on a couple of Arkansas's best players, and then Williams ended up having kind of a star-making game there, which is not great. But on the whole, it's kind of everything just comes out even after that week. I still feel exactly the way that I felt really before the season even began. It's all about that postseason. Can you make it? Well, they've done that. There's essentially no way that you're going to miss the NCAA tournament at this point. And so now it just turns to, what are you going to do when the rubber meets the road in a couple weeks in March? I'm going to be at the SEC basketball tournament, and I'm excited, very excited to see what unfolds, because, man, this league, Auburn goes to Florida over the weekend and loses. They haven't won in Gainesville since 1996. I couldn't believe that.
Wow.
That is still true with Bruce's time there and how good they've been for the last 4 or 5 years with him there. That is shocking. But maybe they just haven't played there that much since then. But they still haven't. They lost. Auburn lost in Gainesville yet again. So you never know what's going to happen in this league. And there's a ton of parity, even with Auburn being as good as they are. They are certainly the best team, and they're going to win the regular season unless they implode. But come the tournament, Kentucky, good enough to beat them. Tennessee, good enough to beat them. Arkansas, good enough to beat them. Alabama is on the edge. Florida on the edge. Now, I mean, obviously, Florida did just beat them, but I think everybody knows what I mean. Like, in a tournament setting, on a neutral floor, like, Auburn clearly is superior to Florida. And so we'll see. But I'm hyped about this postseason. I'm going to stay excited about it until Rick gives me a reason not to. I will put it that way. Trying to be positive, keep my mindset positive, because the team is good. The team is good. It's all there. Just go do it, please, so that we don't have to have these conversations. Please, Rick, just do it.
Hopefully, we'll still be talking about Tennessee basketball in late March.
I hope so. I certainly hope so. It's always. That's my top Tennessee sporting achievement that I have never seen in my lifetime. Not sure I'll ever see, frankly, is Tennessee making a Final Four. I want it so bad. I'm a basketball guy, like, to my core, more than football, even, as much as I, born and raised Tennessean and Vol. But basketball is just my sport, and we have a curse. We have a hex on us for some reason where the Final Four just eludes us, where South Carolina can make a Final Four, Auburn can make a Final Four, and freaking we can't. Maybe this is the year. And with that out of the way,
yeah.
Any other? Well, before we move on, thoughts on basketball? You got. Oh, let's talk about this. You got back-to-back games. Before we talk again on this show, back-to-back games against former Tennessee basketball coaches. You got Conzo Martin. We're going into the Quan Zone on Tuesday at Missouri. Missouri is garbage. Tennessee should win that game by double digits walking away. They've played well in those road spots this season where they're favorites, like big favorites. Tennessee has played well in those spots. Hopefully they continue that. Missouri's terrible, but then you play Bruce this weekend. Big game there, because you still, if you beat Auburn in that game and Auburn loses one more, I think Tennessee will likely win all the rest of its games. At least they'll certainly be favored in all of them. If you win that one and then Auburn loses one additional game, Tennessee would be tied for top in the SEC. And then, does it count if you have the head-to-head against Auburn? I don't know exactly what the rules are. Or are you co-champion?
I think they just go co-champion no matter what. I could be wrong, though.
We were co-champions in, was it
2016? Or was it?
I don't remember. Whatever, 2017.
Yeah, maybe.
And we were co-champions. Of course, Bruce can't let us have anything nice. We were co-champions with Auburn that year. So annoying, but it's just you just can't understate how massive that game is. I was looking at tickets earlier; they're just through the roof, expensive. Everybody's going to want to be there. It's definitely going to be sold out to the rafters. So exciting game again. Tennessee can win it. Will they win it? Don't know. Bruce has had their number.
2018, 2017, and
Okay.
18 is when co-champions with Auburn.
Yeah, I have the T-shirt. I should know.
They lost to Auburn and just played once. So yeah, I guess the head-to-head doesn't really matter then.
Interesting. Well,
okay. Yeah.
Either way, you're that close. That's how good of a season Tennessee basketball is having. I'm sure that most fans realize that, but that's where you're at. You're 2 games behind Auburn in the SEC right now, 1 behind Kentucky, and you're tied with Arkansas at the top of the league. It's right there. Just go take it, please. I mean, the main thing that I want to see is an SEC. This is another thing that I've never seen in my lifetime, and I don't know that I ever will. An SEC tournament championship. Please, dear Lord in heaven. I want it so badly. And with that out of the way, football. Tennessee still has a football team. We were hoping that it would just remain a quiet offseason. I guess this really tracks, doesn't it, Zach? Because we always kind of say, like, we'll record a show, and then some news drops that we weren't able to cover, and the show's suddenly irrelevant. Thankfully, that didn't happen this time. But what did happen is that last week, we literally had a segment of the show where we talked about how good it is that Josh Heupel has kept his staff intact. We went, man, that's a green flag. That's a great sign. It's a great sign that guys like working for him and working with him. And that it's awesome to see after all the attrition that you had with Butch and Pruitt. And then Cody Burns, the wide receivers coach, announces that he is going to the New Orleans Saints to have that same exact position down there. He's going to be coaching wide receivers. So that leaves a vacancy on this staff. I'm not going to give any hot take. That's not a red flag. The guy found a great opportunity. He's going to go take it. Congratulations to him and his family. That's awesome. Now with this vacancy, where are we going, Zach? What are we doing? You wrote about this earlier today. But what are you thinking? What are the people thinking? Where's the consensus right now?
Well, nobody really seemed to like my ideas. I guess they weren't. I don't know. They out there enough. I hard to know where Heupel will go with this. I don't think he's the type that wants to go just hire a big name just for the sake of hiring a big name. Heupel has an offensive system. His coaching staff very close. It's all about the fit for Heupel, and I think he's going to hire somebody that fits into the culture and that fits into that style of offense. I don't think you're going to go see him hire just some random guy because he likes where they coached before because fans like him, because he went to Tennessee. Like I always felt like that's kind of why T. Martin was kind of forced back here in a way. Like it never felt like T. Martin really, really, really wanted to coach back here because he had opportunities and he passed on them and he finally kind of drugged him back. And then it really, I don't know, it kind of felt strained at times, especially towards the end where he had like the promised contract extension by Fulmer and things kind of went south there and he ended up going to the NFL. Those types of hires don't always work out. Like it has to happen organically, if that makes sense. I mean, you just can't force a guy on Heupel because he went to Tennessee. Like that's going to be a disaster if you try to do that. Let him hire his guy, and it probably won't be a Tennessee guy. It'll probably just be a random hire that maybe doesn't move the needle that much. But if that's what Heupel thinks the program needs, then it'll work. Look at how many high-profile hires Tennessee has made over the years that got fans excited, and then ultimately that hire doesn't really work out. Bob Shoop, defensive coordinator, everybody loved it. It was terrible. Jim Chaney, not necessarily his fault. It was just a bad situation altogether with Jeremy Pruitt, but it didn't really work out. There's been others too, like I said with T. Martin. I wouldn't say that it didn't work out, but it was definitely strained. It's just, I don't know. The big name hire, I'm over it. It's been done. It doesn't really excite me anymore. Just hire the right guy. Just get the guys who are going to come in there and work and that you think needs to be there.
Here's the thing with position coaches. They're like a dime a dozen.
Yeah.
You could even for this job, there are guys out there and a whole pretty large number of guys who would crawl on broken glass to be the wide receivers coach at Tennessee. It's a great opportunity for career advancement, especially in Josh Heupel's offense, because Josh Heupel is going to do your job for you. His offense is incredibly kind to quarterbacks and wide receivers and running backs. It's an incredibly efficient, fast and fun offense, and he's going to, essentially, like I said, he's going to do your job for you. Nothing about this makes me go like, we got to find a guy who's known as a great wide receivers coach, and he has to be, but you know, we need tons of experience and all of this. But nah, I mean, he's not. I doubt Heupel is going to hire anybody like that, and to me, it doesn't matter. What does matter is, can you recruit? That's it. That's all I care about. Can you recruit? I really liked your suggestion in the article that you wrote, A2Zsports.com. Go check it out. You suggested David Johnson, who was previously at Tennessee, but that's not what I care about. Previously at Tennessee with Pruitt, and I think he did a pretty decent job. He was the running backs coach back then.
Well, he did wide receivers 1 year too. His first.
Oh, he did. He did. Okay.
Chris Winkie was.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
When T. Martin came, he switched to running backs. They did all that jumbling around.
That's right. Yeah. You're jogging my memory now. I don't remember the whole history. He left from the running backs position. Yeah, that was his last position that he held at Tennessee. But historically known as a pretty good recruiter, he is the recruiting director for Florida State. I mean, he's their recruiting director for the Seminoles of Florida State. And so I look at a hire like that and I go, the guy could get the job done and he can recruit. I mean, it is just the bottom line. That's the name of the game in college football right now. You have to get dudes in the door. That's it. Are you willing to be the guy who's going to beat down the door of recruits and be on it 24/7? That's what you have to be to be successful in this league now. And I could see with like Cody Burns jumping to the pros, maybe that was part of his motivation, is he just, just wasn't down for that lifestyle. I understand. I have no speculation on my part. I do not know. But if that was one of the reasons, I get it. I completely get it, because it's a crazy lifestyle. But there are guys out there, again, that would crawl on broken glass to be at Tennessee, that would be that on-fire recruiter, that would be all about it. And if that guy's out there, but he doesn't have the, quote, like, right experience, I don't care. Get that guy, because you need dudes, and you need them bad. Get them.
What's interesting about David Johnson is, when he left Tennessee, after he got to Florida State, he made those comments about not trusting what was going on at Tennessee. It's hard for me to work for a guy when I don't trust what's happening. And then, he left a year before all the recruiting stuff happened. And I wonder now, looking back, if that's what he was referencing, because nobody really understood what he was talking about. And that would be kind of interesting. And I don't know if being a part of Pruitt's staff would exclude him as an option. I really like the Montario Hardesty option. He's coached wide receivers at UNC Charlotte. You could even move Jerry Mack to wide receivers if you wanted to, and let Hardesty coach running backs, or just let him coach wide receivers. Like you said, it's an easy place to coach wide receivers. No disrespect to Cody Burns. I think he did a tremendous job this year with the wide receivers, and I don't want to take anything away from him. But I think it's a little bit easier than some places where you're trying to teach these really complex routes, and Tennessee doesn't really do that. Hardesty would fill the former Vol requirement that people seem to like, but the part that I like is that he's young, he's been around, he's at South Carolina right now, so you take a guy from a rival, and he's from North Carolina. He would give them another recruiting connection in the Carolinas, that Charlotte area they've really been trying to hit lately, with Jerry Mack having some of those connections. I kind of like the David Johnson one better, just because he has the Memphis connections, and I think those are more important than the Carolinas. But either one, I think, would be a really nice addition.
The name that for some reason has come up as Sheik in this. I don't know why people just immediately go to this name, because this has happened in the past. I feel like when a position like this has been open at Tennessee, and I guess somebody just tweeted this to us right before we came on here. Folks saying Trooper Taylor. I have no problem with Trooper Taylor. He was cool. He was great when he was at Tennessee, and then he went to Auburn and was supposedly, good there. And now he's at Duke. He's the assistant head coach, I think, at Duke. Now I think he was in some sense promoted with Cutcliffe. Who is it now? Because Cutcliffe retired.
Oh, it's Mike Elko from
Texas
A&M.
Right. Yeah. And then I just looked after somebody tweeted that to us. I looked, and he's Trooper Taylor's
been out of the SEC for 10 years.
Yeah. And so what that really feels like to me is it would be kind of like T. Martin. You would sort of be forcing it on to Heupel, potentially. If Heupel wants to hire the guy, I don't care. Has great experience. Yeah. If he thinks he's the right guy, has great experience. He was in the SEC for a really long time, and he used to be at Tennessee. I'm all for it. I'm all for it if Heupel thinks he's the right guy. What I do not want to see is like that T. Martin situation where it was sort of foisted onto Pruitt. We found out after the fact was never the right fit, and was just kind of there for this sort of nostalgic, like, welcome T. Martin back to Tennessee, but it really wasn't the right move. Do not want to see any more of that. We've had enough of the, we need nostalgia, get back to the VFLs or whatever. He's not a VFL. He just coached at Tennessee previously. He didn't go to Tennessee. At least not to, I think he went to Baylor, I want to say. Correct me if I'm wrong there, but I've just enough of that. Again, not shooting it down. If that is who Heupel would end up choosing, fair enough. Great. I would consider that a very solid hire. One thing that does give me pause there with that is that he is old, I believe in his 50s.
51.
And the thing is, with what I was saying earlier, to me, this hire is about nothing but recruiting.
And he doesn't even coach wide receivers anymore at Duke, by the way.
He's running backs.
No, cornerbacks.
Oh, cornerbacks.
According to his Wikipedia page, which, could be wrong. But he coached cornerbacks at Arkansas State from 2014 to 2018. So it kind of checks out.
Yeah. I did notice this on their resume. I didn't look close enough. I guess the assistant head coach thing caught my eye first. But
the thing with Taylor is I feel like, and we kind of talked about this before the show with resumes and former tenures and former Tennessee coaches, how that nostalgia factor comes in. If you take all that away, and you just look at Trooper Taylor's resume for the last decade, say, okay, well, he was at Auburn, and then he kind of slipped with Arkansas State. Now he's making it at Duke. If his name wasn't Trooper Taylor, people would hate that hire. They would absolutely hate it.
100%. It would make no sense. The cornerbacks coach from Duke.
Right.
People that's who we're going
lose
with.
Their mind. So I don't get it. Somebody even threw up Peerless Price. The guy's not even a college coach at this point, as far as I know. I mean, he's...
Yeah, okay, so see, he is. He's running backs right now. His Wikipedia page must be wrong. Because I looked at Duke's actual website. Sorry to cut you off there.
Okay.
Yeah, so it says currently on Duke's website, associate head coach and running backs coach. I thought that was right.
I cannot believe Wikipedia was wrong.
Unbelievable.
It's shocking. Not to keep that note there.
Yeah, but he has. You were right though. I think on this page it did say he was a cornerbacks coach. He was at Arkansas State. He was the cornerbacks coach and at Duke. And it does say so. This last year he was the cornerbacks coach, and then now is running backs.
Okay, I got you.
So there
that makes sense.
You were.
I forget what
you were right, and you weren't kind of at the same time.
Yeah. But yeah, these hires. Somebody threw out. Like I said, somebody threw out Peerless Price, which you would never do if he didn't go to Tennessee. Somebody said J.J. McCleskey, who is the secondary coach at Tulane. I mean, can you imagine if Josh Heupel hired the secondary coach from Tulane and it wasn't a former Vol? People would hate it. So I've never understood this. Well, just because they went to Tennessee, they're going to be a good coach here. No, that doesn't make any sense at all. Some of Tennessee's best assistants did not go to Tennessee. I mean, David Cutcliffe, for example, Alabama guy. It doesn't matter where you went to school. It doesn't make the program win games. T. Martin didn't bring wins with him when he came. Jay Graham didn't bring wins with him when he came as an assistant. Just hire the right guy. That's all that matters.
I mean, and maybe saw last week Jay Graham's back in town.
I saw.
Of course,
Yeah,
he is a former running back and a running backs guy. But again, it's kind of a position where the job is done for you with Josh Heupel's offense, and to some sense, you would have to be a competent coach. But I think Jay Graham's a very competent coach in a general sense.
I think he just wanted to get out of coaching in general. I think he had some things going on. That was kind of the way things went down at Alabama, where he kind of left on his own after taking that job after leaving Tennessee. Not really sure what he had going on, but it seemed like he kind of wanted to get away from that. So, and I can understand that. He's still helping coach kids, but not in that same environment, which honestly, being an assistant college football coach right now has got to be one of the toughest jobs in sports. I mean, you're never stop recruiting. If you're not recruiting high school kids, you're focusing on the kids already on your roster. There's no rest anymore when it comes to that. The transfer portal, for now, never closes, so you always have to manage that.
You just think about what did Cody Burns make? What was his salary?
Probably like 400, 500,000, I imagine.
Do you think about? Let's see. Mason made $363,000. He made $363,000 according to this. Right, that was his original contract.
Yeah.
He $300,000 in his first year. Then it went up from there. $300,000 to just have your life be dominated by your job.
Yeah.
I mean, it is just endless. And there are good, like, you can be like a real estate agent or a accountant or an engineer and make $300,000. Well, this is not as good of an example. I was going to say a doctor. Doctors work around the clock too sometimes, but you can have a job like that makes that kind of money and not have to run your entire life into the ground. It's hard to have like a relationship with a spouse.
Mm-hmm.
It's hard to have kids. It's like this job. It's an understatement to say it's like not for the faint of heart or something. Like, you have to be willing to essentially, like, for lack of a better word, like, sell your soul.
Yeah, it's not as glamorous, not nearly as glamorous as people like to think, especially in college.
Yeah, I get it.
You see these guys want to jump to the NFL.
Exactly. I mean, I said that earlier. Like, if Cody Burns wanted out, I get it. This job is just rough. And you don't make that huge money until later. You don't make it until you become a coordinator. You don't make it until you become a head coach. And yeah, I know regular folks making $50,000 a year think $300,000 is a ton of money. And it is. It is. Lord knows, it's a hell of a lot more money than I make. But you have to think about the trade-offs there and what it means for like a peerless price. Peerless price. At least I don't know what his financial situation is, but it seems like from like his social media, the dude's sitting pretty. He's chilling. Why would he want to come and torture himself to be the wide receivers coach of Tennessee? Maybe he does. Maybe some guys just naturally have it for the love of the game. And that's great. It takes a special kind of person to be that way. And Lord knows the coaching profession needs guys like that. But man, why would he want to do something like that? And Jay Graham, if he's already been out, why would he want to do something like that? And it was, I guess I never totally finished that thought. I said the Trooper Taylor is an older guy. Being in that kind of position where you have to be so on fire with recruiting, that's a young man's game. That's not something you want to be doing that much later in your career, where you're just in an airport or on the school plane 24/7 going to see kids play in the middle of freaking Bumtown, Mississippi, or wherever you're recruiting from. Like, that's not easy. And I just, to me, to wrap this all up in a bow, this isn't the give out a job to folks with Tennessee connections. Give this to the best person possible. To me, that is whoever will recruit for you the best. and be a competent wide receivers coach. But to me, the wide receivers coach part comes in second. Sounds weird to say, but that's the nature of college football at this point. You got to have dudes. And if you can find somebody with that kind of a resume, let's do it. I trust Heupel at this point. He's put together a pretty solid staff and made some nice hires already. And so I would expect it to just be an out of left field kind of hire. I think it's going to be somebody that none of us are thinking of.
Probably so. And a quick note, because somebody will tweet it at us, I'm sure. It looks like Peerless Price this past year was a volunteer assistant coach at Tennessee State. So
interesting. Okay.
Again,
so maybe
the resume, though.
But again, volunteer. Like there's a big difference.
Yeah.
Between, I'm a volunteer and, hey, this university is giving me $500,000 to do my job, and these are the expectations. Like, that's a big difference. Tennessee State compared to the University of Tennessee in the Southeastern Conference. That's a big difference. Good for Peerless. That's cool. I didn't know that he was doing that. But
you know what amazes me? This is a little bit off topic, but you talked about like the commitment that you have to make when you're an assistant coach. It's always surprising to me. I don't know why. I don't really know the ins and outs of these guys' lives and how they approach their jobs. Anytime a coach gets fired, these coaches usually aren't fired yet. They're hanging on with an interim head coach, but they're still recruiting. And they never really stop. Like until the day that they quit, leave, get fired, whatever, not retained, they're still doing their job as far as trying to bring those players to whatever program they're at. I mean, you see these interviews with high school players all the time, and it's like, yeah, they don't know what's going to happen, but they still tell me that Tennessee's the right place to be. Like, you don't really see these guys just like cash it in. I mean, they do their job until they're not being paid by the university anymore, which is admirable, I guess, in a way. But I'm just surprised we don't see more coaches kind of go rogue. I mean, I know it happens from time to time. Look at Ed Ogeron, his last days or last hours at Tennessee, kind of the stuff he was pulling in. I'm sure Lincoln Riley was doing some of that too when he left Oklahoma, but for the most part, it is amazing the commitment that these guys make to this job.
It takes a special kind of person. I feel like that phrase gets like overused in a lot of cases. Like people are like, "Oh, you're a teacher? That takes a special kind of person." I know some idiots that are teachers, okay? It's a noble profession. We need good people to do it. But I know some folks that aren't the brightest crayons in the box that are teachers. To be a football coach, I don't even know that when I say it takes a special kind of person, I don't know that special is like I'm being flattering. It takes a person with a competitive drive that like the bulk of society doesn't have. Like that's what I mean. To have that job in the Southeastern Conference, at the top echelon of college football. I'm sure it's different at whatever lower level school potentially, but like when you are in this league with the amount of money and everything that flows through SEC football, we're not playing around. It is your life. It is your devotion. It is. You just have to be pedal to the metal. I guess we did even say it a couple weeks ago. Like some of these dudes are borderline like sociopaths. Yeah. Like it's all they care about. They just like they don't have a life outside of this. This is what they do. They eat, sleep, everything. This job, this profession, and
sometimes you get a narcissist in there like Butch Jones.
Ooh, yeah, plenty of folks like that. I
don't get it. Like the recruiting stuff. Texting 16, 17-year-olds all day, all evening, trying to build this relationship that's completely manufactured because you want him because he can run fast or he can throw the ball far or whatever. That just seems miserable to me, to live your life that way. And to be the reporter chasing down these recruits to try to figure out what that recruit happens to think this afternoon as opposed to yesterday afternoon. I wouldn't want that either. I mean, I've talked to recruits here and there before. It's not fun. Most of them give you one-word answers.
Yeah.
It's dreadful. It's dreadful.
I've always said it, man. I mean, I used to say this when I was on like Swain and stuff. Like, I'm glad that, we would have on like Austin Price on that show. And I'll be like, I'm glad he does that. More power to him. Seems like he enjoys it. He's living a good life. Couldn't be me. Because doing that whole thing, like tracking these kids down and specifically trying to get like how they feel about a school.
And I know it's not the same for them as it used to be, because these kids are very well aware now of how much media attention is on them.
Whew, yeah.
10, 15, 20 years ago, it was just the diehard Tennessee fans or college football fans in general that were really locked into like what a recruit was thinking last week. I mean, they might say like, "Oh yeah, we're going after that 5-star kid from Nashville. Like, I hope we get him." But now, I mean, it's like an everyday thing, and these kids know it. They're trying to build a brand because of NIL opportunities, which more power to them. I do not blame them one bit. I wish I could do the same thing. But, I mean, that makes that job even harder if you're somebody like Austin Price. And those guys do a terrific job. But it's work. It's not work in the traditional sense, but it is a tough job to do.
It is. I mean, I always said it. I think I said this back then for anybody that maybe found me back on like On with Swain and stuff. I said it back then. It's like if you had to go to your 10-year high school reunion, like, hey, what do you do now? Great to see you. And you go, well, I'm a recruiting analyst for such and such. Like, oh, well, what do you do like on a daily basis? Well, I send 15 texts to 17-year-olds. Like,
chase them down at the airport after their visit.
It's a weird job. But it's big business.
Yep.
I mean, I can't emphasize enough. More power to them. Couldn't be me. So with all of that said, my bottom line on this wide receiver position, recruit. That's it. Get somebody who can get you players, and then I'm sure they'll do a fine job coaching the wide receivers, because Josh, if you can't do it in Josh Heupel's offense, you're not going to do it anywhere else. He couldn't make that job easier on somebody, I don't think, when you look at the offenses in college football. And so find somebody to get warm bodies in the door.
He for sure should have people knocking down the door, because look, Cody Burns was with him for 1 year. He'd been in the the SEC for 7-8 years as an assistant coach. And now after 1 year with Josh Heupel, he gets an NFL opportunity. Yeah. I mean, what better advertisement for a career than that? Come here. You're going to get a job in the NFL if that's what you want. And then we'll move on to the next one, or we'll groom somebody to step up from behind you to replace you.
I was actually going to say that, going kind of on the way out of this part of the conversation, is I'm interested to see if Heupel's just a hire from within guy. If he just goes with, some of those offensive analysts. I'm not sure who is the person that helps with the...
like Kelsey Pope or something, I believe is one of the names. Okay. Who seems to have a good reputation. I think Heupel's a smart guy. I mean, don't let the kind of laid back demeanor fool you. He's a very intelligent guy. You've heard some of his coaches talk about how just freaky smart he is. When he left, or when he took the Tennessee job, he had hired Matt Merritt to be his running backs coach at UCF. He brought along, and I think he had hired Cody Burns, there at UCF, and he brought him along, brought some other coaches along. Matt Merritt had came from James Madison as a running backs coach. He knew that Matt Merritt was not the recruiter that he needed on a staff at Tennessee. He brought him along as like an analyst, and now I think he's moved on to Georgia State or Georgia Southern or something. But in that moment, it showed me that he knows, like, he's very aware of, like, hey, I need guys that can recruit, that can go in these players' homes and secure this commitment. So that kind of makes me think maybe he won't just promote a guy unless it's somebody that's been with him a long time, that's kind of helped out with some on-campus recruiting. Kind of makes me go more towards an outside the organization hire.
That's a good point. Interesting. I did not know that little bit of history there. So we're going to keep tabs on it. We're going to talk about it whenever that hire gets made. Whoever may end up being, maybe it is Trooper Taylor, maybe it is Peerless Price. That would be really cool to bring Peerless Price back. I will say that I love Peerless Price, man, absolute legend. But just if that does happen, I hope he knows what he's like in for. I'm sure he does, but like, man,
I thought about this. Now here's the one problem that Peerless Price could bring is how does it fit with the staff? Because Peerless Price is a 90s volunteer. Is he going to want to come in and do things Josh Heupel's way? Or is he going to be like, well, no, this is how we won a national championship in 19, how does that dynamic work? I mean,
that's interesting. And maybe ultimately that's like you said, Heupel may go specifically for a fit hire, where he hires a guy that he knows is not going to do anything like that, that will toe the line as far as that goes. That would be interesting. I mean, you can't deny Peerless knows a thing or two about winning college football games, but he knows a thing or two about winning college football games in the 90s when it was a little bit different. And I love, from what I did previously, I got to interact a pretty good amount with a decent number of dudes on that football team. They all, at least all the ones that I ever talked to or came into contact with, they all had a killer instinct, man. That's what you notice across the board with those guys, is it makes total sense that they were that cohesive and that good, because they were just, Al Wilson, Peerless Price, and T was in that same vein, just a competitor. Like they were just dudes that got it, I guess you could say. And I would love to have that at Tennessee again, but to your point, does that fit in with what Heupel wants to do? I don't know. Is that even what Peerless would do? We don't know. But
yeah, he might listen to this and be like, well, I don't want that job. I'm just happy just being a volunteer.
Yeah, I just can't. So some guys, as we've already been saying it, some guys are just competitors like that. Like, it doesn't even matter. They'd be like, you give me $5 and this is what I would do. They're absolutely, and those are the perfect guys for those jobs. Mm-hmm. Be willing to do it for free. That's how you can get ahead. Some guys maybe just like that, but I just know, man, if you made that kind of money and you could just sit back and not work like an absolute dog, for it's certainly not a paltry amount of money, but for probably less than you deserve, that's, more power to you if you want to, but it would be, again, a certain type of person.
Yeah. Another name that's been floating around out there today?
No.
Billy Gonzalez, that was at Florida under Dan Mullen. Very good recruiter, wide receivers coach. Apparently,
okay.
And I don't know if how much this would play into it. Him and Alex Golish have some crossover. They were at Illinois at the same time, back in the 8 years ago, whatever. So that, there's a little interesting connection there, perhaps, and he has a lot of SEC experience.
This is why I was like, I know this name. It was from Florida, but the first stop in my time in media was covering Mississippi State. During the year when they had Dak and they went to number 1 and all that stuff, he was the wide receivers coach then at Mississippi State. So obviously been a Mullen guy that entire time. And that's why I remember him even from back then, because he had some dudes at wide receiver, Darunya Wilson and guys who I believe died, if I'm thinking. So RIP to him. I'm just saying these things. I'm pretty sure that happened. I have to look now. I can't say a guy died. And
we don't want
to. Yeah. He did pass away in 2020. I was thinking correctly, but I don't want to. And rest in peace to him. But I'm glad that I did not say that someone passed away who did not. So all of that aside, this is going off the rails. That would be great. I would be 100% for that. And let's see what names come out. I'm sure the aforementioned Austin Price will have the names coming down the pipeline sometime soon, or guys like that, and we'll talk about it when that does come. But Zach, I think we're coming up on an hour here. Any parting thoughts? Anything that we didn't cover? We were thinking about talking about the fact that the college football playoff didn't. They said they're not going to expand until after the 2025 season, I believe, at a minimum. And that is annoying, but we're kind of running up on it now. I don't think we're going to have time. But any other stuff that we may have missed?
Yeah, we could go on about the college football playoff expansion talk for an hour. Easy.
It's a whole other
sure.
podcast.
Yeah, it's very complex, but otherwise, kind of crazy. Yesterday, I wasn't sure what we were going to talk about, and then Juwan Howard punches somebody. Tennessee loses its wide receivers coach, and lots of things happening in college sports this week. Kentucky lost their offensive coordinator, which I think's a big blow for them because he really revolutionized, I guess you could say, their offense. They were like 108 in the country, up to like number 30 something this past year. Not quite as drastic as Tennessee's improvement, but pretty drastic. And that guy had no connection to Mark Stoops at all. Came from the Rams. It's where he's going back to. And what do they do now? He was the quarterback's coach too, so you probably not going to promote somebody on the staff. So now Mark Stoops has to find an offensive coordinator to maybe bring in a whole new system at Kentucky. I don't know. It could be hard to have some continuity when you're a defensive coach and you lose your offensive coordinator.
Yeah, he's about the only guy that had gotten that offense figured out during Stoops' time. I mean, that's been the whole hang up with Stoops, is that he runs this like Air Force style spread offense. And it just hasn't worked. But that's an interesting opening. Hopefully, a Golish doesn't come up in that conversation.
I don't think so.
Doubt that would happen. But that never say never. Full Tennessee, as you said there, we had nothing to talk about, and then 24 hours later, we got everything to talk about. So.
You want a red flag? Coach leaving for a lateral move to Kentucky?
That would be bad.
Yeah, that's pretty
very bad. I do think they gotta be thinking big with that hire though, because they're essentially hitting the ceiling of as good as that program can be.
They got lucky though with this guy. He was an assistant quarterbacks coach with the Rams, and they gave him the offensive coordinator job.
That is random.
I feel like they just got lucky. And maybe they go right back to that tree. Maybe they go back and try to find another Sean McVay. There's like 100 Sean McVay disciples being up all over the place. Apparently, they never run out. There's like all these 36-year-old quarterbacks coaches that are suddenly head coaches. It's bizarre. So maybe that route.
Another thing that we'll keep an eye on, even though no matter who they hire, they will lose to Tennessee, as is tradition. Mm-hmm. It's a futile effort on Kentucky's part, but I think that's it. I am Charlie Burris. That is Zach Ragan. We thank everybody for listening this far into the show. If you did, you're a trooper. We appreciate you. Thank you so much. Ended up last week, man, people see Arch Manning in a headline, and they are clicking, they are listening, and they did. I believe cumulatively with all the numbers between YouTube and everything now, that was our biggest episode ever, I want to say. So thank you to everybody that listened to that. I think we got some folks with the whole Arch Manning thing. Sorry to the people that tuned in hoping that we would say he would be coming to Tennessee.
No. All you people commenting that you don't care about Arch Manning, you're lying.
You do. We see the numbers on our end. You do care. That's the thing. Charlie Burris, Zach Ragan, at Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT on Twitter, at A to Z Sports, and Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, A to Z Sports.com for everything that we write. The A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed. Subscribe, rate, review, do whatever you got to do. And A to Z Sports on YouTube. Just put it in the search bar. It'll be the first thing that comes up. Subscribe, hit the little notification bell there, and then you won't miss an episode no matter what you do. You got to cover all your bases. Make sure. We might secretly post it only on YouTube, and then you'll see. No, we won't ever do that. But what if we did? What if we did do that, and then you would see it because you subscribed and hit the notification bell? All right, that's it. I think that. How could this be any more ridiculous? Thank you for listening, and we'll talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.